it seems like a lie. You say it tastes good when you're online. You know it feels good when you know it's a lie. You say it tastes good when you live on the line that feels great now. The night is falling. You say it tastes good when you live on the line that feels great now. The night is falling. You say it tastes good when you live on the line that feels great now. The night is falling. You say it tastes good when you live on the line that feels great now. The night is falling, 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 falling.
The towers are gone now, reduced to a bloody rubble, along with all hopes for peace in our time in the United States or any other country. Make no mistake about it, we are at war now with somebody, and we will stay at war with that mysterious enemy for the rest of our lives. It will be a religious war, a sort of Christian jihad fueled by religious hatred and led by merciless fanatics on both sides. It will be a guerrilla warfare on a global scale with no front lines and no identifiable enemy. We're going to punish somebody for this attack, but just who or what will be blown to smithereens, for it is hard to say. Maybe Afghanistan, maybe Pakistan, or Iraq, or possibly all three at once. Who knows? Not even the generals in what remains of the Pentagon or the New York papers calling for war seem to know who did it or where to look for them. This is going to be a very expensive war, and victory is not guaranteed for anyone. And certainly not for anyone as baffled as George W. Bush. All he knows is that his father started the war a long time ago, and that he, the goofy child president, has been chosen by fate and the global oil industry to finish it now. He will declare a national security emergency and clamp down hard on everybody, no matter where they live or why. If the guilty won't hold up their hands and confess, he and the generals will ferret them out by force. As said by Hunter S. Thompson on September the 12th, 2001. My name is S.M. Gibson. As you may notice, I am not Levon, and we are not here to discuss what you'll be eating tonight. This is going to be a very special show of Anti-Media Radio on this 14th anniversary of 9/11. We're going to have a bunch of guests on, and we're going to talk about what happened on that day and what's happened every day since then, and where we're at now in not only this country but in the world, and why still so many people in this country refuse to believe that no matter what happened on that day, that our rights have been completely eroded, that millions of people have died around the world. And does that make up for the 3,000 lives lost 14 years ago? As always, Shannon Madden, I'm going to bring him into the call right now. Shannon, how you doing, sir?
Good evening. How you doing, Mr. Gibson?
Can't complain. And down in San Diego, California, our editor-in-chief, Mr. Nick Bernabe. Nick, how you doing?
Hey, what's up? I'm doing pretty good. Enjoying this crazy day on social media with 9/11, all this stuff going around, and looking forward to address some of the disinformation and a lot of the other concerns that are going out there about 9/11. I was at the airport earlier today in San Diego dropping a friend off, and it was crazy the amount of security down there and all that stuff, and we're going to get into all that as well later in the show, hopefully.
Yeah, and also sitting right next to me here in the studio is Chase from Birmingham. Chase, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing good, man. Doing good, man.
So, this is a day that causes a lot of conflict and turmoil, especially in the quote-unquote liberty movement, the alt-media circles, people, going back and forth with each other, conspiracy, not conspiracy.
You're talking about all those people with the tinfoil hats, right?
That's the one that they that they like to bring up a lot. Apparently,
I've got mine on tonight.
that's good. What do you usually do, though?
Absolutely.
So, yeah, for me personally, I can sound like a fool or a lunatic, and that's fine. I don't really care. But there's so many unanswered questions, and I am not somebody that buys the official story of 9/11, but that's not because I'm, some crazy conspiracy theorist, even though that's what the mainstream would have you believe. That's because I have eyes and know how to have intelligent thought process. Nick, what are your thoughts on all the stories that surround the events?
Man, there's just so many layers of information. I mean, at the very surface of it, we've got the official story and the official investigation, the 9/11 Commission and all that stuff. And even just looking at that information, it's pretty clear that the 9/11 Commission was very much like the same commission that investigated JFK's death. It was very insufficient. It was underfunded. A lot of the facts were disregarded. And even if everything that they say is relatively true about the whole terror attack on 9/11. The fact of the matter is that there was never really a sufficient investigation that would put a lot of these conspiracy theories to death, or at least quell a lot of the thoughts that people have. And now, the secondary layer here, and this is one of the things that a lot of people don't know about, and I want to read a little statement here from AE911truth.org, which is Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. Now, everyone, as Shannon mentioned, people like to write anyone off that questions the official story of 9/11 as a conspiracy theorist, a tinfoil hat wearing loon that lives in his mom's basement and that kind of thing. But, the thing,
hey,
the
my mom
fact
has
of the
a
matter,
nice basement. Leave her alone.
Yeah, man. Unfortunately, you guys actually have basements. I was stuck in my mom's backyard for the longest time doing this research because out here on the West Coast, we don't have many basements. But there's over 2,000 professional architects and engineers that have joined in an organization and a push to try to, dig deeper into the official story. And now these people aren't saying that the government brought down the towers. They're not saying anything like that. They're just saying that judging by the demolition, judging by the way that they fell and the way they went down, there's a lot of the official story is just not adding up. So that's one of the first things I want to get out there, man, is that we're not out here saying that, the government did it or that anyone did it in particular. Nobody knows. Nobody knows who really pulled it off, unless you completely believe in the official story. But there's plenty of professionals out there, scientists, architects, engineers that don't believe the official story, and that kind of lends credence a little bit to to what people are saying out there, and especially with Building 7 and the fact that it was never actually hit by a plane. A lot of people don't even know about Building 7. It was right nearby where the towers fell. It fell independently without being hit, and it just had an office fire. It caught fire from some debris that fell, and the entire building all fell down at once in a very controlled demolition fashion. And so I'm going to read a little statement here from the Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth website. In the aftermath of the tragedy, most members of the architectural and engineer community, as well as the general public, assumed that the building's destruction had occurred as a result of the airplane impacts and fires. This view is reinforced by subsequent federal investigations culminating in FEMA's 2002 Building Performance Study and the 2005 and 2008 reports by the National Institute of Standards and Technology, also known as NIST. Since 9/11, however, independent researchers around the world have assembled a large body of evidence that overwhelmingly refutes the notion that airplane impacts and fires caused the destruction of the Twin Towers and WTC Building 7. This body of evidence, most of which FEMA and NIST omitted from their reports, instead supports the troubling conclusion that all three skyscrapers were destroyed in a process known as controlled demolition, where explosives and/or other devices are used to bring a building down. And this is directly from their website. It's a nonprofit, and they are pretty well known A lot of well-known architects and engineers are part of this organization. So I just wanted to throw that out there, man. I don't think that anyone that questions the official story of any government conspiracy, because keep in mind that there's plenty of government conspiracies out there. In fact, on the anti-media, we have a story called 10 Conspiracy Theories That Actually Are True, and a lot of them have to do with getting us involved in wars and things like that. I mean, a lot of conspiracy theories are completely true, and anyone questioning the official story, I don't fault them one bit. I'm completely against making unfound accusations. I don't believe in that, and our site is all about debunking myths like that and really getting the truth out there. But the fact of the matter is, the government has such a bad track record of telling the truth that people automatically assume that they're lying from the get-go.
But
And I don't
here's the
fault
thing about
anyone
that,
for
man.
that.
Here's the thing that's frustrating about that to me is you have people that are very, they consider themselves the skeptics, or even if you're talking about like down here in the South and people that watch Fox News and don't trust the government. They'll be the first person to tell you. I'll say, well, do you trust the government? Well, no, I don't trust the government. Not at all. And, whether we're talking about, the quote skeptics or somebody down here, and then you'll say something about what do you believe about 9/11? Well, of course I believe about 9/11. Why would they lie? It's like you just got done telling me you don't trust them, and then you're going to take their word for it. This is my personal stance. I've gone on record with this many times, and I feel like this is really the only. Unless you know something that the public doesn't know, I think this is as far as you can go with it. And I don't feel ashamed in saying this, and I think, people that do say this, they do get called crazy. I don't think that anybody can sit here and say 9/11 was an inside job based on the government was involved. That's when you start connecting dots from, you're filling in the blanks yourself. I think what we do know, though, is for me personally, with science and using my brain and using my vision, I've seen zero proof of there being an airplane at the Pentagon. I have seen zero proof of there being an airplane at the site in Pennsylvania. That's not to say an airplane didn't go down, 10 miles away and they didn't put it on TV. But the site that we've been shown, I have never seen an airplane there. And then the three buildings, especially with architects and engineers that know way more than me, I would tend to believe that those were all controlled demolition. Now, as far as anything else goes, I can't sit here and say, well, it was an inside job, George Bush was involved. I don't know any of that, and I don't think anybody else knows any of that, and I think that's when, people start going off the rails and start filling in the blanks for themselves. We have things that we know, and then we have these questions, and people try to answer these questions themselves, and I feel like that's where the conspiracies come in. For me personally, all I know is that we've been lied to, and we need answers.
Exactly,
well, and again,
man. I agree with you. Go ahead.
As far as conspiracies go, let's look at the ingredients for what makes a good conspiracy. These are the facts. This is what we know. We had several explosions in and around buildings in New York. We saw all of us. I myself was watching the Today Show or something mundane at a customer's house that I happened to be at when I saw the first plane hit, and it was incredible. It was absolutely just mind blowing that you're watching something like that on TV. So we know that we have these buildings that have gone down. We know that the day before, old Donnie Rumsfeld had something to say about $2 trillion coming up missing. We know that that's a fact. The day before, we know that there's been, oh my gosh, so much evidence from the Clinton administration and early on in the Bush administration that there was plans of this attack. The government knew about it. There's been internal documentation, except for some stuff that got lost or scratched out, or so on and so forth. There's the point I'm trying to get at is that there's all of these questionable situations that happen in and around this event. We have the report that Nick just stated a moment ago, and we're not just talking about a bunch of tinfoil hat wearing people. We're talking about very respectable engineers and people that that build giant buildings like this for a living, and they build them up, and they also have to tear them back down. Situations like implosions and controlled demolitions and this, that, and the other. You don't just go in there and start systematically dismantling a building. You blow it up and you start from scratch. So these are folks that kind of know what something like that looks like. We have all of these questions, and nobody's got a definitive answer. Well, you saw the footage. I mean, terror. That's it. That's the best that anybody's been able to come up with. Oh, well, terror. That's it.
And I was reading, and it's funny, I was reading today, there's so many people that are just, that talk about the Iraq connection, and well, they never said that. And I was reading earlier today, like all these quotes from Condoleezza Rice, Dick Cheney, George W. Bush, going down the list of them not making connections, them saying directly, Al-Qaeda in Iraq, over and over and over, connecting those two things. And we know now definitively 100% that those two things never had anything to do with each other, and that they were, guess what? The government lies. And they were connecting the two things as an excuse to go into war. And as far as the actual events of 9/11 too, and people that say, well, the conspiracy, whatever they believe, none of these things could be true. The government told me the right story. We're talking about buildings that collapsed within an hour of being hit, or right around an hour. It's never happened in the history of the world, and yet somehow their passports survive. Now, I'm not a genius, but I know better than that. They tell me that an airplane disintegrated in Pennsylvania and the passports survived. Come on.
Disintegrated.
Yeah. Come on.
And I've unfortunately had to witness, well, not with my own eyes, but wreckage site footage from various different airplane crashes over the years, and that's the first time I've ever heard of anything like that completely obliterated and incinerated an airplane, a commercial airline.
And one thing too, and I know this is something that me and you, Shannon, discussed, and me and you, Nick, have discussed this many times, and I think this is the first layer of getting to a little bit of the truth, are the 28 pages that I know Congressman Thomas Massey has made a very big deal about, and there's also a website called 28pages.org if anybody wants to check that out. Nobody knows what's in it. Again, people filling in the blanks for themselves believe that it tends to implicate Saudi Arabia and their government funding the whole thing, but nobody really knows. And that's another rabbit hole. Everything, is the unexplainable, and people just try to give themselves the answers. And that's where I think these conspiracies are grown out of, and nobody just wants to focus on, anybody with a brain knows, these are the facts. These are the lies we've been told, and we feel helpless, I think, as people and as a society. So we just try to answer it for ourselves. But the truth is, we are helpless in the situation. We don't know. And we do know we've been lied to. We do know that we were drugged into war over what happened 14 years ago today. We do know that our rights have been completely eroded because of what happened 14 years ago today. And this isn't the same country as it was 14 years ago in one day.
Exactly, man. And we got a great article up on the Anti-Media today regarding some of these lost liberties, man. And so, in my opinion, it's not as important to worry about the conspiracy itself as it is to worry about what's gone on since. Because, as we know, conspiracies are used to create manipulation, to push an agenda, things like that. And definitely, if you look at what's gone on here in the U.S. when it comes to civil liberties and foreign policy, we see that there is a major agenda at play that gained the support of the public directly after 9/11. So, first of all, there's a major war that's gone on now in Afghanistan, and of every foreign policy action that's gone on, that was the most legitimate one because Osama bin Laden supposedly took the blame for the attack, and we legitimately were supposedly going to go out there and take out Osama bin Laden. Now, unfortunately, we decided to overthrow an entire country to try to find Osama bin Laden, and we went and we took out the Taliban. And now, of course, the Taliban has not gone away. In fact, every day it seems to be more emboldened. It took out like 50. It killed 50 of the Afghan government forces just a couple weeks ago. And when we finally pull out of Afghanistan, the Taliban is going to still be there, and the Taliban is going to be part of that government once again. Now, one thing that has come out of Afghanistan is a lot of opium. And that's something that plenty of people have conspiracy theories about. There's not much to this whole conspiracy. The fact of the matter is that the Taliban had almost eradicated opium. It was at an all-time low in 2001, and now it's at an all-time high as of the last time they did a survey. So that's not really a conspiracy. That's a fact that's actually happening. Opium is flowing out of Afghanistan now more than ever, and it was almost completely done away with in 2001. Now it's just flowing, and it's going. And where's the opium going? Well, it's going right into the pharmaceutical companies where they make OxyContin to sell to 11-year-olds, as another recent story we covered on the Anti-Media goes to show. And as anyone can pretty much attest to, there's a huge opiate problem in the United States.
Rush Limbaugh needs something to get through a show now. Leave him alone.
Yeah, him and his listeners. There's a lot of opium going around in the form of prescription drugs, whether we're talking about legal prescriptions or we're talking about abuse of OxyContin and other opiates, Vicodin, and there's a huge black market for those drugs. And I'm sure that Big Pharma isn't too worried about the black market because they're the ones making all the product, making all that money. So they do hate marijuana, though.
But here's something that's scary, and I hate to interject, but you're talking about the Taliban and Al Qaeda. David Petraeus just recently came out and talked about what's going on in Syria and the U.S. Let's team up with Al Qaeda and take care of ISIS. That's terrifying because remember, like we were told for years and years and years, Al Qaeda, the Taliban, they're the devil. Let's go get them. And now we have a former general, former head of the CIA. That's talking about let's team up with these guys. Let's team up with these guys to take care of the new bad guy. The new scary fear this week. And also another thing is we see all these refugees on TV right now, and they're just flowing out of Syria, but they're flowing out of other countries as well. And we really went into great detail more about this last night, but that's all directly related to the United States interjecting itself in the region because of 9/11.
Exactly, man. Exactly. It's the foreign policy that was enacted directly after 9/11, and for
it's
a
the
long
butterfly
time.
effect, basically. Except it was, instead of a butterfly, it was buildings collapsing.
Yeah, exactly. And American people they don't want war. They don't. After the Gulf War, and it was a pretty quick war, but then you had the Gulf War syndrome. People were pretty wary of it. In fact, George Bush ran on a very humble foreign policy, as Ron Paul famously said. George Bush campaigned against Clinton and against his actions in Kosovo and Bosnia and all the stuff Clinton did under the radar. And Bush really campaigned against nation building and all that stuff. And the people, supposedly supported him for that. Now, of course, it goes into a whole other conspiracy about the whole 2000 election and all that stuff. But we won't get into that right now. The American people aren't war-hungry people, man. But they are easily manipulated by the mainstream media. Shortly following 9/11, there was this crazy patriotic fervor, and anyone that said that we shouldn't go to war was labeled as anti-American, labeled as anti-patriotic.
You're with us, or you're with the terrorists. It came out of the President of the United States' mouth.
Yep.
Exactly, man. And this is the narrative that the media likes to push. It's this, you got to choose a team, you got to choose a side, and if you can choose the side of ours or you can choose the side of theirs. And this is the narrative that comes out every time there's any kind of big deal, anytime there's any kind of big attack, or anytime there's a mobilization of the American public opinion. And that's exactly what they did, and they were really, really successful at it. Now, keep in mind, the largest protests. Some of the largest protests in history were done to, go against the Iraq War. In the U.S., there were several million people that went out and protested against it, but it obviously didn't stop them. But in hindsight, we look back and we find out that, they were just lying about this whole thing afterwards. I mean, forget about Osama bin Laden and all that for now.
Whoa, Nick, I got to stop you there. They weren't lying. They were just misinformed.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, we're here to tell the truth tonight. Come on now, they were just misinformed. It was a misunderstanding.
So yeah, I mean, looking past the Osama bin Laden thing, and as I said, I mean, according to everything that is officially known, maybe that was kind of legitimate, at least going after Osama bin Laden. Now the whole overthrowing the Afghani government, horrible idea, shouldn't have done it, but. Then we get into a little, 2 years down the road, looking at 2003, we start looking at, now it's Osama bin Laden, now it's Saddam Hussein, and now we got to go into Iraq. We've got to go overthrow the Iraqi government. Iraq's got weapons of mass destruction. They're going to blow us off the map. They're going to wipe Israel off the map. I mean, we were all lied to about that. I mean, let's be straight up. We were lied to. In fact, several Bush era officials have recently come on the record saying that the intelligence reports were let's just say that they were altered before they were fed to the public. So
Nick, did you see the thing on the Intercept earlier today that came out? And they went down and showed pictures from 9/11 and had different world leaders talking about it. And they would always...
golden opportunity.
Yep. Each one of them would use the word opportunity, golden opportunity, fantastic opportunity, whether it was Netanyahu, whether it was George W., whether it was Dick Cheney, whether it was Condoleezza Rice. They would always talk about this great opportunity that has just befallen them.
There's actually something I want to say. We keep talking about conspiracy theories, and when 9/11 happened, there was a lot of things right when 9/11 happened. Now, one event that did take place that kind of I can see where there is a lot of conspiracy theories that you don't hear about that much these days was. Does anybody remember? Shortly after 9/11, all of a sudden the country got bombarded with the anthrax. Remember the anthrax scare?
I remember it very well. I actually got caught up, and this is a true story. I got caught up in an anthrax scare downtown Birmingham at the financial center here in town. And it was a pretty scary event. The bomb squad was called out. We had the chemical crew came out. Apparently somebody had left a envelope on the elevator, just like all of the other hoaxes that we saw shortly thereafter. And cut open the envelope to see what was in it, and there was a bunch of white powder that went everywhere. And it sucked. I had to take Cipro for a week, and that stuff is hell on your stomach.
Yeah.
Anyways, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. That's just,
no,
I had to throw that out there.
No, you're good. I actually remember that, but that happened. That whole situation actually happened directly, right after 9/11. And I've read. I don't know if anybody's kept up with a lot of with that case, but there was actually a lot of years after it was all said and done. There was actually a lot of questionable stuff that happened within.
Yeah, they tried to pin it on a scientist at a university somewhere. I'd have to look that up while we're talking.
And he apparently committed suicide or something. There's a bunch of stuff surrounding that.
Okay, I'm interjecting on everybody. Shannon, I'm interjecting. I'm bringing on our first guest for the night. She's got a wonderful story up right now on the antimedia.org. Miss Claire, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Fantastic, ma'am. Okay.
Hey, Miss Claire, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. Let's talk about it.
Okay, let's see. So the U.S. is not the only country that has 9/11 as an anniversary that needs to be remembered. One thing that has really gone out of, I think, people's memories, and I don't even think it's taught that much. I didn't really learn about it that much, like in primary school, is the coup d'état in Chile when Pinochet came to power. And it was a really bloody coup d'état. There were, I guess, thousands and thousands of people were arrested and detained in stadiums. There were executions, and, I mean, it just sounded really incredibly awful. And, of course, it brought in Pinochet's 17-year rule, which was equally awful. So this is a pretty big deal.
Yeah, I mean, it really is, and that's the thing. And then it goes back into the Nixon administration and the CIA.
Yes, exactly. And there was some controversy because there were rumors that the CIA and the U.S. government were involved in the coup. And a lot of people tried to discredit that and say that wasn't true. But I guess, documents have been released rather recently that show that the CIA very much helped to orchestrate the whole coup. We were very much a part of it.
Claire, just to interject here, I have the documents in front of me. Anyone wanting to find them, just Google nsaarchive.gwu.edu. It's a college archive, and it's on the CIA activities in Chile. Within a year of the coup, the CIA was aware of bilateral arrangements between Pinochet regime and the Southern Cone intelligence services to track and kill opponents. Arrangements that developed into Operation Condor, which is kind of very much involved with the U.S. government. The CIA made General Manuel Contreras head of the DINA a paid asset only several months after concluding that he was the principal obstacle to a reasonable human rights policy within the military junta. So, the CIA had paid assets within the military dictatorship of Pinochet. The CIA made a $35,000 payment to a group of coup plotters in Chile after the group had murdered the Chilean commander-in-chief, General Rene Schneider, in October of 1970. The CIA has an October 25th, 1973 intelligence report on General Ariano Stark, Pinochet's right-hand man after the coup, showing that Stark ordered the murders of 21 political opponents during the now infamous Caravan of Death. This document is likely to be relevant to the ongoing prosecution of General Pinochet, who is facing trial for the disappearances of 14 prisoners at the hands of General Stark's military. Of course, that's kind of an older report. But basically, what these documents show, and in fact, even Nixon had made statements and directed some of his budgets to help undermine the regime of the democratically elected government of Chile. And so, the main underlying factors here from my research that I've done is that very much like the Banana Republic and a lot of the other actions that we committed in Latin America that are not talked about at all by the media or in the history. And in fact, you won't really learn about this stuff unless you take like special classes in college regarding our Latin American coups, and I learned today that there actually are classes on that in some of these colleges. But it came down to economics. The president, the elected president of Chile, Allende, he nationalized the copper industry, and he was on the verge of nationalizing the communications industry, both of which were heavily dominated by U.S. corporations. And the corporations are on record. In fact, there's video of it in the article that Claire wrote of these corporate CEOs basically saying, hey, anything the government wants to do down there to secure these resources, we're willing to back it up. In fact, the elected president accused the telecommunications industry that was run by U.S. corporations of trying to start a civil war in the country. But all signs point to CIA involvement in overthrowing this government. But what really is troublesome is the amount of damage that was done once Pinochet took power. And I think, Claire, maybe you can elaborate a little bit more on what happened after he came in.
Well, he took power, first of all, within about a year of the coup. And then the reports say that between 1,200 and 3,200 people have been killed, 80,000 people were interned, and as many as 30,000 more were tortured. So it was a pretty extensively brutal regime.
And this entire time, keep in mind that we maintained diplomatic relations with this regime. They allowed our corporations to go back in and continue to take the copper and continue to operate the telecommunications industry. And according to these documents that were later declassified, we knew about all these horrible abuses going on, but we turned the other way because we were making a bunch of money out of it. And that's kind of a recurring theme that we see with a lot of U.S. foreign policy. If you look at our situation with Saudi Arabia, which also ties back into the whole 9/11, the 2001 9/11 incident and all that stuff, you see this theme of the U.S. constantly allowing military dictatorships, monarchies, just total fascist run countries to operate and do business with us as long as they cooperate with us economically. And then you see a situation like Libya where Gaddafi decided, okay, I'm not going to cooperate with you economically any longer. And then we say, oh, well, you need democracy now. And this is the problem that we keep seeing. We see the selective use of justice waged by the military-industrial complex, more or less, where we're perfectly fine with dictatorships like Pinochet, like Gaddafi, like the Saudi monarchy, until they get out of favor with U.S. economic interests, and this is a huge problem. And part of the reason why we have all these wars going on overseas, talking about Syria right now, talking about Iraq and ISIS and all this stuff. Most of it has to do with economic interests of U.S. corporations and nothing to do with trying to establish justice. I don't think the U.S. government gives a shit about ISIS and what ISIS is doing to the people in Iraq. They care about making their oil pipelines to cut Russia out of the geopolitical game. And this it seems to be like it's something that keeps on happening.
It's very true. And that's the thing, though. But everything is through manipulation, and everything is through manipulation of the population, and, the currency is fear. That's where we're at. And the scary part is the erasing of history when we're talking about the incident in Chile, 42 years ago. That was, our government was involved in violently overthrowing a country, and yet there's still people that get on Facebook and sit here and make these comments like, but our government would never do anything like that. It's like, what planet do you live on? Like, seriously.
Never forget.
They love us.
Yeah,
they just
how
want what's
stupid
best for us.
are you?
They would never harm us.
They would never. No, they would never. They would never do anything to anybody. They love you. They're the greatest. And this is the problem that I have. This is the biggest problem that I have, is that people have intertwined their government with God. And they think, but God loves me, so the government loves me, and they would never do anything wrong. And I want to take my fist, and I want the knuckles to hit their teeth until those teeth hit the back of their throat. That's how it makes me feel.
I really think those people have lost sight of who their God is and who their God has become. And he's on Fox News right now, yelling about something.
Yeah,
angry.
One thing
angry.
One thing that I don't want to get lost in this whole situation is that a lot of the actors that were involved in what went on in Chile and also in Afghanistan when Al Qaeda was actually initially created are still around. And I'm talking about Henry Kissinger, and I'm talking about Brzezinski. In fact, Kissinger complained to Nixon that we weren't taking enough recognition for our role in the overthrow of the government of Chile. I mean, Kissinger thought that we should go public and say, "Hey, look, guys, look what we did. We beat the communists. We helped them overthrow that government." But Nixon, according to this conversation that has been declassified now, a phone conversation, Nixon told Kissinger, "Well, we can't show our hand on this particular incident," and that's exactly what he said. So Kissinger is still around. He's still advising Obama. He rubs elbows with Hillary Clinton on a regular basis. The Republicans love this guy. Both
Everybody
parties turn to this guy.
Yeah.
Brzezinski is still alive. I mean, I don't know when this guy's going to die. He must be like over 100 by now. Brzezinski's still around. Obama said that he looks up to Brzezinski and confides in him for foreign policy stuff. This is the guy that created Al-Qaeda. And these are still the guys that are helping pull the strings in Washington, D.C., and we can't forget about that. These same actors that helped pull off these horrible, horrendous acts in Latin America and the Middle East, they're still advising, quote unquote, our politicians, man. It's
and
crazy.
The thing about, especially with Kissinger, like personality-wise, he reminds me so much of Cheney, because you get, like you were talking about with Kissinger, and he's just like, let's just tell everybody what we did. I'm not ashamed of it. And me and Shannon have talked about this in very much detail on this show. You get W, you get Condoleezza Rice, you get Colin Powell, and they're all just like, sorry, guys, whoops, didn't mean to. And then you get Cheney, and he's just both middle fingers in the air, and he's like, I'd do it again. What do you want?
I'd do it again, and next time I'd be riding on a flaming white stallion.
Yeah. Like, you
and
don't
holding
care.
a machine gun and blowing everybody away. Dick Cheney does not care.
In charge. And Cheney just recently came out and was just like, yeah, whatever. We got to do what we got to do. This guy, by the way, also is backing Marco Rubio for president. So, that's the endorsement you want.
I don't doubt that, and that's exactly why I've been calling for calling it that Marco Rubio is going to win. He's flying under the radar right now. But if you look back at 2012, the Republican primary, they had like 9 different front runners. Anyone running as a front runner right now is doomed for failure, and that's why Trump is still out there being a huge distraction. He's got no chance of winning. I think, being the fact that Kissinger is backing Rubio, he's probably going to be the guy to win. Thankfully, here's one positive thing about Kissinger, is that outside of the U.S., where of course we have a heavily brainwashed and propagated population, and not everybody, of course, everyone listening in on the show tonight is probably broken out of the propaganda machine and all that stuff. But outside of the U.S., Kissinger in many countries, especially in Latin America, he's not allowed to go there because he'd be arrested on sight. He'd be thrown in jail. In fact, one of our journalists with the anti-media, Derek Brose, he may be joining us tonight on the call. He attempted a citizen's arrest on Henry Kissinger down in Houston when Kissinger was there giving a talk. So people around the world, and even here in the U.S., have realized the war criminal that this guy has become, especially for his role in Chile, among many other conflicts, ongoing things. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if he helped advise Hillary Clinton on the whole Libya overthrow of Gaddafi and all that stuff too. People are aware of this guy and his crimes. Maybe in the U.S. he still gets a pass, but around the world he doesn't, and that's good. I'm glad that people are finally aware of what's actually going on with these evil neocon or neoliberal, whatever you want to call them, two of the same warmongers, man, and I'm really glad about that.
I tell you, I don't want to get into this real far at all, but it's exactly what you're saying, Nick. It's funny, everybody talks about, the United States is free and we have all this great stuff and blah, 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 and it's true, the United States does have a level of comfort that most other countries don't have, and yet at the same time, the United States is the country that's been lulled to sleep. You talk about all these other countries that see Kissinger and they're just like, he ain't coming here, we're taking him out. In the United States, they're just like, whatever, we've got cable, we don't care.
Exactly, though, man. Exactly. We're living in a bubble. We're kind of like the modern day Roman citizen that doesn't really realize our empire is collapsing until it finally does. There's no telling when it's going to happen. But right now, we are living in this bubble of comfort, and we do have all this nice stuff to keep us distracted. And a lot of people have a lot of good jobs.
The bubble is like, it kind of works two ways too, because we have an enormous poverty issue in this country, and I bet most people don't even know that. So it kind of works.
There's
15?
Is it 15? We've talked about this, Chris. Is it 13 or 15,000 people going homeless in L.A. every month right now? Something just ridiculous. Some other number that doesn't even sound real.
Hey, I'll tell you what. I've noticed here lately in Birmingham that the homeless population's getting pretty big here in Birmingham.
And
yeah,
the funny
it's really
thing
sad.
is we also have a lot of empty houses too. Isn't that funny how that works out?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, man, and here in the U.S., and this kind of ties all the way back down to all this stuff, post 9/11 foreign policy, Here in San Diego, where I live, we have the highest per capita homeless rate in the country. We have about 10,000.
I will say this though: if I had to be homeless, I would live in San Diego.
Yeah, exactly. That's part of the reason why a lot of them come here is because the weather is nice and they don't freeze and they don't get baked to death out in the sun. But it definitely ties back in with the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, because 40% of our homeless population here in the U.S., 40% of the 10,000, so about 4,000 of them are veterans, man, and these are all guys that are suffering from PTSD and even more severe mental disorders that in many ways are caused by these wars that they're thrown into.
But they get mad at you, Nick. Here's the thing: they get infuriated with you. Support the troops. You better support every troop, every single troop. You better support him. And yet, 40% are homeless. I tell you what, right now, I want to bring the man himself, the incredible journalist, my heroes, Mr. Derek Bros. Derek, how's it going?
Hey, how's it going, brother? I'm doing well.
Doing good. Okay, so we're doing the 9/11 edition of Anti-Media Radio, and you are in New York City right now. Give us the rundown on what happened today.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I'm in New York City, and this is ground zero, literally, for the 9/11 Truth Movement. Hopefully today there were people all around the country and all around the world spreading information and holding events. But here in the city, we had a long day of action at ground zero. The We Are Change New York City group and lots of other activists typically go there every week. So people were set up outside of the PATH station, the bus station right next to Twin Towers in the former Building 7. And it's kind of a tradition. Just go out there and set up with these boards of information, lots of flyers, talking to people, getting yelled at, debating people, opening lots of minds. And even before that, even before I got out there, I got told I should go join ISIS. I got told that I need to get out of America and all sorts of fun things just for wearing a shirt that says September 11th with a big question mark on it. So
I tried to send you a flag, though. I tried to help you out earlier. I tried to send you that flag.
Yeah, the guy said that we should be wearing our American flags today. Wear them proudly. But it's been a good day. Like I said, there was some street action earlier, and then tonight was actually a really good documentary that I was able to check out. It was presented by the Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth and also the Firefighters for 9/11 Truth, which is marking the return of their founder, Eric Lawyer, who's a firefighter out of Seattle. He's been absent, I guess, from the movement for about 5 years. He said he was dealing with some personal issues and had a sort of a spiritual awakening that is now kind of shaping the way that he's crafting his 9/11 message. So he came back today, and they presented this new documentary, which is called Firefighters, Architects, and Engineers Expose the 9/11 Myths. And it's a very informative documentary, as are a lot of these documentaries. And I think for those of us who've been involved in researching this and writing about it and being on the ground level of this, a lot of the information is kind of a no-brainer. You know, once you look into it, when you start digging into 9/11, it becomes so obvious, and that was kind of the feeling I had today. I'm sitting there watching the documentary and just thinking about if only we could get this information broadcasted, you know, on national TV or something similar, that would probably wake up millions of people, just get them thinking and questioning the events surrounding 9/11. You know, and that ranges from the financing of the attacks to the physics of how 3 buildings can fall at nearly free fall speed, you know, with no resistance below them. So there's a lot of different information, and I personally have been coming to New York City now for 5 years to try to keep this, you know, this movement alive and just be a part of it and to watch it grow, watch it shrink, and hopefully watch it grow again. And it's interesting. Sometimes it's definitely daunting and feels discouraging, but at the same time, for those who never get a chance to come to New York City, if you do and when you do, you come to find out that actually a lot of New Yorkers agree with the 9/11 Truth Movement and have many questions. And it's not just crazy conspiracy theories, paranoid wackos like the media would have you believe. It's family members and firefighters and engineers and architects. And
Yeah, that was going to be my question to you, Derek. You being there on the ground, especially today, and interacting with everybody, like how receptive do you see people that are, you know, are just walking past you? Do they look at you and they say, oh, you know, that guy listens to too much Alex Jones, or are they just like, yeah, I already know? Yeah, we already know.
There's you get a mix, honestly. I'm a weird looking dude, so people already look at me weird and think that I must be crazy. But then you've got a range of people who are, I'm 30 years old. You've got young high school kids and college kids out there who are asking questions and passing information. You've got 50 and 60-year-old men and women who are, credentialed professionals who are putting their jobs and their careers on the line to ask these very important questions. So you've got a range of people doing this, and you've got a range of people who are open to the information. As I said, you definitely get the crowd that's like, get out of here, you're disrespecting the country, go join ISIS, go to Syria, go to North Korea, whatever country they want to name.
Personally, do you think because you're where you are, do you think a lot of those are tourists that are, maybe some people from, back where you're from in Texas, where we're at right now in Alabama, these kind of like, whatever, go back, to ISIS or whatever?
I think that definitely some of this crowd is tourists because honestly, in past years, my experience has been that the New Yorkers are, of course there's going to be the sensitive New Yorkers, just like there's sensitive people in general, but definitely my experience has shown me that the New York crowd is honestly the crowd with the most questions, and the crowd that needs to question it because it happened in their city and in their state. But my other experience has been, because, international people just coming from all over the world traveling to New York City, especially on this day, my experience has been that the people that are outside of the United States, they generally tend to accept the fact that, the Americans were lied to about 9/11. And that's always been interesting to me, to talk to people from Iran and talk to people from, Mexico or Germany, Denmark, and all these different places that people who travel here, both activists and just, vacationers, tourists, who are like, yeah, you Americans are in a matrix. You're in a little bubble. The rest of the world's looking at you like you're silly. And, that's always been interesting to me. And honestly, the perception that is put out there by the old stream media that we have to counteract, that, institutions like the anti-media are working to counteract, is this idea that it's dangerous or it's not a popular idea to question 9/11. But in my experience, it's been the exact opposite. People are open to these ideas. Yes, there are some people who think that questioning 9/11 on 9/11 is an insensitive thing to do, but for me, I just think about the nearly 3,000 people who have died, and I think about the fact that right now we have a bipartisan bill trying to declassify 28 pages of the Senate report on 9/11 that point to Saudi Arabia financing the 9/11 attacks, yet the official 9/11 commission report and the official 9/11 story, according to the government, doesn't even mention Saudi Arabia.
And here's the thing, and yet there were 15 of the 19 hijackers by from the commission. 15 of the 19 hijackers were from Saudi Arabia, so what's, the idea? Afghanistan and Iraq. Saudi Arabia's in the clear. Like, that's insane.
Exactly, and this is one of the things I was trying to point out to somebody. I got some good video that should be coming out on the ConsciousResistance.com in the next couple of days. And, just you see so many interesting conversations. You see people debating. I really love being there because, in my experience, you've got these different elements of the 9/11 truth movement. Like I said, people set up their boards, and some people just stand behind the boards, and people come up and they watch, and they take pictures and they ask questions. Other people are more comfortable just passing out flyers. Some of the activists are just kind of ranting and raving really loud, and I enjoy the debates. I like to go out there not because I want to shout anybody down, but because in the past few years that I've been doing this, I've seen at least 50-plus people through conversation. By the end of that conversation, I see their eyes and their mind open up and see them being willing to, going from being like, you guys are just crazy, to being willing to take a DVD or to take a flyer. And my hope is that those people go home and they put in that DVD, or they, do their own research and they start down the rabbit hole, and then we get to add another person to the army of people who have free minds and free hearts and who are looking for answers about not only 9/11, but the many crimes of the U.S. government and governments around the world, and who are actually starting to focus on solutions. So it's a beautiful thing to me. Like I said, it doesn't always work out that way where people are sort of won over. I was just telling my friend, it's amazing to see how human beings, how we're able to just come up with this insane logic to keep our worldview. I can sit there, and I was trying to talk to somebody today, for example, and he just kept bringing up things like the moon landing, or he said, oh, you think this. He kept trying to tell me what I thought and, what theory I was describing. And I kept telling him, I'm not here to talk about any particular theory. I'm just here to tell you that there are plenty of questions that remain unanswered about 9/11. And if you actually want to have a real conversation, you can talk about those.
But that's government propaganda, though. That's how they tie things in, because even Obama was giving a speech one time and somebody said something about 9/11 or his birth certificate or whatever it was, and he ties it into aliens. You know, that's how the propaganda works. They want everybody to think you're crazy.
And that's exactly true. And so, you know, basically me and this guy are having this conversation, and there's a big group of people crowding around, and this is how it tends to get. And so I told him, I said, you know what, I'm not going to talk to you anymore. I think these people here who are watching and listening, they actually want to have it. They want to hear a real conversation, and you're not interested in having a real conversation. You're interested in trying to, you know, this is a common tactic of these people to keep their worldview intact. This is definitely cognitive dissonance. What they'll do is they'll sit there and they'll ask you, well, what do you think happened, or who do you think did this, or what was the motive? And they'll try to get you to speculate. And I really try to encourage individuals who are on the ground level, hitting the streets with not only 9/11 but other controversial topics, to not waste your time speculating, because we all have different theories and ideas that we can guess, and we can come to a conclusion that might sound very plausible. But the second that we claim to know exactly what happened on 9/11, that's when it's easy for them to discredit us, because the truth is none of us really know. We have a lot of pieces, we have a lot of information that points to a certain direction, and that's interesting. But we're trying to convince the people that are out here on the ground level to start questioning 9/11, and you don't do that by going, way deep into these really abstract theories about, who did 9/11 or who's benefiting from it. I think you do that by just sticking with the really simple and basic questions, like how do 3 buildings fall by being hit by 2 planes? Why don't we know who actually funded these attacks? Why, all these different questions.
I agree.
That
I
come
think the
about
28
9/11.
pages is a huge hinge as far as converting people over. I think that's a great way to introduce people, just to say, hey, there's this whole thing in Congress right now that even Congress people are like, what's going on?
Dude, trust me, I thought that too. And, these people I'm talking about, I'm sitting there telling this guy, I'm like, dude, look up 28pages.org. Look, you can go see for yourself. And I'm naming off the congressmen and the senators and people who come out and spoke out about the 28 pages and said that they point to Saudi Arabian financing. And the guy is just like, well, what am I supposed to trust the congressman? I mean, they just say, he just keeps like, no matter what you say, if the people are determined not to listen to you.
He doesn't trust. I'm going to blow my brains out now. So.
It's really an interesting exercise in watching humans fail at logic when you go down and do this, because like I said, it's a sensitive topic, but even when you put all the pieces.
Looks like Derek dropped off, but we've only got a minute left. I tell you what, Nick, you got anything else before we cut out of here?
Yeah, man. I mean, all I can say is just don't stop asking questions, man. It's healthy to ask questions, challenging authority, especially with this corrupt-ass government we got now. They lied to us directly after 9/11 regarding Saddam Hussein, weapons of mass destruction. There's very much a reason to question whether they lied to us about the entire incident. So that's all I can say.
That's it, and they're going to continue lying to us. But I tell you what, thank you, Chase, so much for joining me in the studio. Thank you so much, Shannon, for calling in. Thank you, Claire. We'll be back next week on Monday. Join Nick. Anti-Media Radio. Never forget Anti-Media.
I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo.